It's everywhere. It's in advertisements, it's on social media, it's in the movie theaters, it's in the mall. And you've probably heard the saying that sex sells. And there's almost an intentional effort to desensitize sex and make it into something that it really isn't. You have to understand this about Satan. Satan does not create. All he does is corrupt. Satan did not create sex. However, what he wants to do is corrupt sex. He wants it engaged in the way that God did not design it to be engaged in. But let me tell you something. There is nothing casual about sex. In 1 Corinthians 6:16, Paul was talking to the Corinthians. He said, don't you know that when you lay with a prostitute, you become one with that prostitute? And he's not just talking about prostitutes. He's also talking about anybody you lay with. You become one in the spirit with that person. And there is nothing casual about it. So even if you believe, this is casual, just because you believe it's casual does not mean the consequences will be casual. Because the consequences of having sex and joining yourself with somebody is spiritual, it's mental, it's physical, it's psychological, and it does have an effect on people. So let us talk about the sacredness of it. It's God's design, and it's a great thing when it's done in proper order. In His wisdom, God ordained sex to be carried out in the confines of a marriage covenant between a man and his wife. You see, God understood the vulnerability that comes with it, because you're opening the most sacred parts of you to another person. You're sharing this very intimate part of you with another person. And so God did not intend this act to be carried out frivolously. He intended it to be carried out in a place of emotional security, confidence, and without fear. I was also desensitized to sex, and I didn't fully understand it until I gave my life to Christ 10 years ago. And I started to understand that whenever God gives a commandment, whenever God gives an order, whenever God creates something and says, here is the proper way to use it, it's for my good. So my celibacy while I'm single, my staying away from it while I'm single, is really not doing God some kind of favor. This is about me. This is about my peace. This is about my personal walk with God. This is about my spiritual growth. God does not owe me anything for keeping myself. Yes, He's proud of me. Yes, He's happy that I'm doing it. But the truth of the matter is, there is no better alternative. In fact, there's no alternative. And sometimes we treat abstinence and celibacy as some kind of act that we're doing for God. Meanwhile, He gave these instructions for our own benefit. Because imagine going out there and tying yourself to that person, and tying your soul to that person, and being spiritually joined to that person, and being one with that person. And then after it, God eventually shows you who you're supposed to be with. And then you need deliverance and a severance of the soul ties that you've created with all these people. God had an order in mind. God had us in mind when He created this wonderful gift. But Satan put his hands in it and corrupted it. We have this great privilege that God calls our bodies His temple. And we ought to honor God in our mortal bodies. Now, He totally understands everything that we go through. He totally understands the struggles of living in this human flesh. And you can talk to God about it. You can be dead honest with God about it. However, we must submit our sexuality to Him and everything in our lives back to Him, because He's a loving Father and He does care. And let me tell you something, wherever God has called you to be, that's the best place you're supposed to be. If He has called you to be single for a season, that's the place where you're going to find the most satisfaction. All you got to do is find your purpose in that place. And if He has called you to be married, that's where you're going to find satisfaction in that season. If He's called you to be single and you're married, there's going to be no satisfaction there. If He's called you to be married and you're pursuing singleness, there's going to be no satisfaction there. Wherever God has placed you, if you seek Him and you find the purpose why He has placed you there, and you give Him your everything right there, not thinking too far ahead where you're supposed to be and, get me out. And it's this thing about us where we always think, the grass is greener on the other side, and wherever God has us, we want ourselves somewhere else. But I'm telling you, stay where God has you. Stay where He has planted you. There is a purpose in that place. And if you ask him, God, show me the vision even about where I am in my life. Because don't you think it's too tormenting for God to have you in one place and you want to be somewhere else? You know, for God to want you to be single in this season and pursue his purposes for your life right now. And you say, no, God, I really want to be over there. So if you just pull back for a second and say, God, it is your will that I'm where I am right now. So show me what you want me to do. How may I serve you in this place? And that's where satisfaction comes. Satisfaction comes from remaining in the place God has you and fulfilling everything in that place. Now, there is no condemnation to those who are in Christ Jesus. And you know, we've all sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. And so there is forgiveness for sins in Christ Jesus. And when we know better, we start to do better. Congratulations, you made it all the way to the end of this video. You might as well consider subscribing to my channel so that you can keep up with my upcoming contents.